The combination of population growth in sub-Saharan Africa and progress in other parts of the world means that sub-Saharan Africa becomes the dominant region of those without electricity access in the world, representing 90% of all the people in the world that lack access to electricity, compared with around half today. This means that in 2040, some 500 million people in sub-Saharan Africa, mainly rural areas, remain without electricity and continue to rely on the use of kerosene lamps, despite the many contemporary programs for off-grid lightings which help to reduce their use. Although the picture in urban areas is different, the number of people reliant on firewood for cooking in rural areas where consumption is much larger due to lower clean cooking access hardly changes. Rising incomes produce only a gradual shift in cooking fuels and the technologies used.
Africa having even the largest world population, which is mostly the 13%, but it generates a very low, less than 4% of the electricity, where it covers the whole population in Africa. So why this is happening? Because one is there are certain factors that really impairs. Because first of all, the investment and also the right policy and also the clear and coherent institutional and regulatory framework. When we see, for example, Africa really endowed more than 1,000 gigawatt of the wind resource and the 10,000 gigawatt of solar. And if we see the Great East African Rift Valley, it endows more than 20 gigawatt of geothermal resource. But we see now we are really suffering from power shortage, and particularly nowadays, there is a significant increase of economic growth in Africa, and there is a high demand for energy to go ahead. So the African governments are really looking for having this development of this renewable energy resources, and they are ready to revise their policy and also regulatory framework in order to attract private investment, because all renewable energy requires the intensive also the investment in terms of public-private partnership and independent power producers.
Pollutant emissions occur along the whole chain of fossil fuel life cycle, from extraction to final use. In all cases, the production phase involves the on-site consumption of energy, mainly diesel or produced natural gas. In addition, there is sometimes non-productive combustion resulting in carbon dioxide emissions. This is seen in the practice in parts of the oil sector to flare unmarketable volumes of associated gas, as well as, in some instances, the direct venting of natural gas to the atmosphere. Despite the rapid expansion in recent years of renewable sources of electricity, the great majority of the world's power generation continues to come from the combustion of fossil fuels, with coal-fired generation still providing the backbone of the global power system.
We know that development doesn't happen in a vacuum, and that our countries need to have the right enabling environment. And so for purposes of climate change, we are not only working with our member states to mobilize resources, but we are also working with them to create the right environment to support them to meet their commitments under the Paris Accord. So here we were looking at supporting countries to pursue low carbon pathways for the oil and gas sector, but we are also working on mining. That is important. Our countries need these resources to grow and industrialize, but they also have commitments under the Paris Accord. So how can we help them develop these resources while pursuing a low development pathway? And that is the discussion we've been having today: what kind of policies, regulatory environment, and institutional frameworks we can have in place.
Africa has witnessed the rapid adoption of renewable energy targets over the past decade, with 41 countries having introduced at least one type of technology or sector-specific target, as well as dedicated off-grid policies. Meanwhile, the continent has a significant untapped potential for renewable energy deployment and has witnessed a number of interesting developments leading to job creation. In North Africa, Egypt and Morocco are not only deploying wind farms, but also a manufacturing base.
The tremendous positive news that you've heard about the growth in the penetration of renewable energy was only possible because of the foresight and of champions investing in technology, policy, and finance over the last 20 years. If we'd have this same roundtable 5 years ago, we would have had to say that solar was too expensive and wind was too expensive. But today, wind and solar are achieving prices around the globe that are cheaper than traditional fuel sources. And this is due to successful technology development. But what we still need, because the penetration of clean energy technologies is not universal and it's not happening everywhere fast enough. So in Africa in particular, we continue to need a strong policy to incentivize energy efficiency and renewable energy and financial engineering.
Across the continent, electricity demand is set to triple in the period to 2040, with natural gas remaining the #1 power generation source by 2040.
The approach we are taking in the bank is to support the countries to have a mix. So even as countries are developing their fossil fuel sector, we are supporting them to develop alternative sources of energy. And so we are helping them to transition because these are non-renewable resources anyway, regardless of what the time frame is. And so we are supporting countries not only to transition by enabling them to have a good mix of energy sources, but also to diversify their economies. And so that is the conversation we are having with the member states in Africa.
Renewables grow very strongly, with their share in electricity generation projected to almost overtake natural gas as the main source of electricity. Power sector trends in Africa differ significantly by country, reflecting different stages of economic development, natural source endowment, institutional frameworks, demographic trends, and prospects for economic growth.
The green financing that is becoming available, and there will be more and more of this, it will more naturally gravitate to those countries that have less subsidies in or no subsidy in their fossil fuel sector, or even imposing taxes on emissions, because otherwise it's kind of effectively double subsidizing or subsidizing twice. To get to really motivate the renewable sector. But there's other issues as well. I think for a country like Nigeria, it means really looking at the issues with the utilities and the discos, and how private sector companies can be assured that they will receive their payments, that that they get the guarantees that they need. There's all those issues to consider as well.
Sub-Saharan Africa has excellent hydropower resources, but geothermal, wind and solar photovoltaics also contribute substantially to future power supply. It is clear that renewable energy sources have considerable potential to meet mainstream electricity needs. However, having solved the problems of harnessing them, there is a further challenge of integrating them into the supply system.
The power sector is really where we've seen the greatest uptake of renewables. The end of 2014, we had just under 23% renewable energy share in the global energy production. We're seeing countries now being fully powered by renewable electricity. Recently in the news, Portugal went 4 days straight powered purely by renewables. Denmark sees that happening on a regular basis. Germany went 1 full day. So for a country the size of Germany to go 1 full day on renewable electricity is really a good indicator that this is not sort of just a little side thing that you have on the top of your roof or on your cell phone. The problem that we're facing right now is that we need to get better penetration of renewables in the heating and cooling and transport sectors. Growth in both those sectors is less than 10%. Given the fact that heating and cooling, about 50% of final energy consumption is in the heating and cooling sector, this represents a huge, huge potential. What we are starting to see in the transport sector is renewable energy electrification, or the use of renewable energy electricity in mobility. So there's really a large potential there for renewables.
Obviously, sun, wind, tides, and waves cannot be controlled to provide directly either continuous base load power or peak load power when it is needed. So how can other dispatchable sources be operated so as to complement them? Experts say if there were some way that large amounts of electricity from intermittent producers such as solar and wind could be stored efficiently, the contribution of these technologies to supplying electricity demand would be much greater. That's our program for the day. Thank you for watching. Do join us next week. But before then, you can view this episode and other episodes of the program by visiting our YouTube channel, youtube.com/channelsweb. Do click the playlist menu and then click Earthfile. From me, Ayola Kasim, and the crew here in Lagos, it's bye for now.